Hello, I'm Stefan Schreiber, I'm project leader for LXD, and this video is going to be a bit different. There's not going to be any demos or anything, it's a bit more of a talking head type video, going over how we do things on the LXD team, because I figured some of you might be quite interested in that. And looking how we do feature development, but also how we do some of the other day-to-day stuff on the team. So on the LXD team, there's effectively three different type of work that we're doing day to day. There's work on bug fixes, work on small improvements and enhancements, and then the major feature work. One thing you might have noticed is that we don't really tend to target anything to a specific LXD release. We do have our priorities, and it tends to be that we will prioritize bugs over just about anything else. We don't want anything to affect our users. We don't want any nasty bugs there. We especially don't want regressions. So anything that we notice that we feel is quite important to get resolved quickly will be resolved, even if that means delaying some other work we're doing. So yeah, on the bug fix side, it's always a priority, and the way we track bug fixes is through GitHub issues. So you'll sometimes reach out, whether it's on IRC or on the discussion forum. Once we feel that this is an actual bug or regression, either we'll just send a fix immediately, that happens sometimes if it's pretty straightforward, or we'll ask you to file an issue on GitHub so we can actually look into it a bit deeper and then resolve it. Once those bugs are fixed, if it's particularly critical, we'll also handle cherry picks immediately to usually the snap package and then roll that out to users so that they don't need to wait a whole month until the next LXD release. The other thing that we do are small improvements and enhancements. So that's also work that's not really scheduled. It's kind of done as we notice them. So sometimes we work on something else, we notice something is a bit clunky, or we could do with a new subcommand, or we could do with a new config key, or something like that. We'll often just do it. Or if not, we will at least file a GitHub issue for those. And those will often be tagged as easy on GitHub so that it's very so that external contributors, new contributors to the community can go and pick those up as a good first way to contribute to LXD, and we'll offer all the mentorship and help that we can to make that a pretty easy and straightforward process for those folks. And then the last class of thing we're working on are major features. Those are scheduled based on our development cycles. You might have seen that in previous videos. We tend to be aligned to the Ubuntu development cycle here at Canonical. So that means we schedule work for the next 6 months. Actually, we are preparing that right now as we're about to wrap up the 2210 cycle and about to enter the 2304 cycle. We're getting that ready right now. That work is usually assigned to a specific member of the LXD team, who's then responsible for writing a specification, getting that reviewed, discussed with the community. A draft piece of work is done, reviewed, then sent for final review, checked that documentation test and everything looks good, and that then gets included inside LXD and is part of the next LXD release. So that's pretty much the three different things that we do on the team. Let's go take a slightly closer look at some of that and what that looks like just online. So here I've got the upcoming milestones for LXD. You can see that we're releasing monthly. There's going to be a bit more wiggle room here and there on some of the dates. I expect the 5/8 one to be pushed by another week just because I'm going to be off that particular week. But we've got some stuff assigned there, and those tend to be some of those smaller features, enhancements, or bugs that we're still working on. Quite often you'll see that we just carry them over to the next release. They are rarely an actual release blocker. So we just kind of move them to the next release, but those are things we want to solve pretty quickly. Now, one thing we see here, if we just go look at issues, there's a bunch of them that are actual bugs are being looked at. We do have label for things that we do know are bugs that we need to actually resolve. And you'll also see that label easy in quite a few places that says it's good for new contributors. If you click on that, then you see a number of issues that we currently identified as being pretty easy to resolve, as in we've got a plan as to what would be involved, and we're happy to help anyone who wants to do it. And you can actually see that a number of those are assigned. So this one is assigned to Tom, who's working at Canonical on the LXD team, but all of the others are currently assigned to other folks outside of the LXD team. That's great, especially at this time of year for anyone participating in Hacktoberfest. We are a participating project, so those are great issues to pick and work on. So that kind of covers both the bug fixes and the smaller feature work type thing. Again, we usually target them to the next LXD release when we feel that something is making progress, just so we've got our eyes on thing, but they're rarely a blocker for LXD release, so they'll just be carried over if they're not done yet, and whatever LXD release they land in, then they get made available to our users. The other thing that's worth just keeping in mind is that LXD has long-term support releases. So currently we support 3.0 LTS, 4.0 LTS, and 5.0 LTS. Only the latest of the LTSs gets bug fixes backported, so that's 5.0 right now. But that means that every single bug fix that makes it into the current Git tree for LXD will be backported to 5.0. That's a lot of commits that we're reviewing and updating and modifying behind the scenes. I think I currently have a backlog of about 300 of them that I need to look at, but that's something we do. And people fixing bugs should always fix them in the current LXD release in Git. And then behind the scenes, we'll take care of backporting everything for them. Now, looking at major releases, that's where things are a bit different. You've probably seen some of the videos that I've done in the past showing our roadmap for the next 6 months. So we're going to have one of those coming up reasonably soon once our plans for the next 6 months are really set in stones. But the way that usually looks like is once we've got the main items kind of lined up internally, we will they're going to be assigned to a team member. Doesn't mean that it's going to be just a one-person thing. Even though LXD feature scope often makes it possible for a single person to drive it all the way through with reviews and help from others. Sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it's a bunch of people that need to work on one thing. That person will then write a specification. Those are all public. So if we go here on the forum, so if you just go front page of the forum, all categories, and you scroll down here to specifications, you're gonna see all of the LXD specs we've got open. And let's pick one that's actually just landed this week. So here, that's actually the Let's Encrypt support. We can see the status needs changing because it's actually been completed now. But we see that it's been expected to be in LXD 5.7, which it will be. It's got an internal ID tracking, but that's just for us. And who wrote it, who's in this case Thomas Hip. And it's been reviewed and approved by both myself and Tom. So I think all of our specs come with an abstract that just describes the rough feature, bit of a rationale for like why we even want to do that piece of work, and then go into the design for what config keys get added. Do you have like any API changes, CLI changes, database, upgrade handling, any of those kind of things? In this case, not so much, but we do have here an API change as an API route needs to be added for its encrypt validation. And there can be some link to like further information, further details for like how we need to put that design. And then you've got some back and forth there. This one, not too much feedback. There's like, we do see some comments from myself, from another community member, and then this got approved. Some specifications have a bunch more back and forth. I think the low-key one was one of those that also landed somewhat recently. That landed in LXD 5.6. And you can see here there's also a bunch of folks giving feedback and commenting, which is really good. I mean, that's why we like having all of our specifications in the open on the forum, because that means anyone in our community can keep an eye on what's going on, can give some pointers. Like, we're not always experts in all of those things. Like in this case for Grafana Loki, it was literally the first time we ever interacted with that. So having actual existing users give us some pointers here and there about potential issues, how to do things, that's great. Once we've got enough back and forth and we're happy on the design, this gets implemented. So going back to that Let's Encrypt spec, that then turned into a pull request here on GitHub, which again went through a bunch of reviews back and forth and fixes, some more questions and everything. We can see that Tom gave most of the feedback on the actual code here, with Ruth, who's our documentation writer and technical author on the team, giving some amount of feedback on the documentation aspect of it. And once it all looked good, it got merged. There's just a little detail I picked on that will be solved in another pull request. Can also see kind of the structure often looks pretty similar in LXD. We like to split things always kind of the same way as far as our commits. That's primarily because of how we then do backports to previous releases. So we like to split the main areas of the code in different commits. And we always will have commits like API extensions, so that we can detect whether a server supports a given feature or not. We don't really like looking at version strings for that, so instead we're using those, which then comes with its own description of what that API extension being advertised by the server means as far as concretely what was added. And same thing with documentation commits also being separate. So in this case, that's the one adding the configuration keys. You can see why they're separate. It's because when you modify Markdown, it's pretty hard to not have to, in this case, modify a bunch of other lines because it's a table. Thankfully, GitHub makes it easier to see what actually changed. So we can see here some keys were being changed. And then the more complete, kind of more user-friendly documentation here is being added as well. So that's kind of how that all looks like. And then that gets merged and the next LXD release comes around and that gets included in there. And I make a release live stream on it, show the feature, and usually a few months later, I do a full, like a more deep dive type video on it. And that makes it to YouTube as well. So that's pretty much how things work on our side. I hope this was useful. Definitely a bit of a shorter video, a bit less of a demo heavy video, but I think that might give a bunch of people a kind of better understanding of kind of how things work and also where to look at if you want to see what's going on, like what we're actively working on, other than just seeing the release announcements every month or so. And also how to get started. As I said, this month there's Hacktoberfest going on. So if you want some of your Hacktoberfest contributions to be through LXD, we do have easy issues open on GitHub that we're very happy to help you with. You can pick any of those up and just let us know, and we'll give you any pointers that we have and make sure that this makes it through. Thank you very much for watching. If you've got any questions around any of this, feel free to leave them below. You can also always go on our community forum, or if it's anything related to directly contributing to LXD, feel free to just log into GitHub and comment into any of those issues and we'll help you out. Thanks and see you in the next one. Bye.